Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270. I'm Paul Thomas and Bill Kearney's in the studio, and we're just going to talk here for a few seconds about the beautiful weather as he gets himself situated in that big cozy chair over there and gets the headphones on and makes his way up to the microphone and begins the show here today on the last Wednesday in the month of January, right before we begin the month of February, and then after that will be the month of March. So we're happy to have you here on the program with us today, and as we are every Wednesday here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM. KXBX, your station here in Lake County for Health Talk. And without any further ado, here he is, Bill Kearney with North Lake Medical Pharmacy.
Well, I just got back from the North Pole. Oh, this isn't the Christmas show. Oh, this was the Super Bowl show.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here.
The Super Bowl show.
You know, we have a party at our house, you know, for my wife's sorority. And
I'm crashing it.
Everybody... you know, we have like 8 televisions, so there's room for everybody to, if they want to be in a room without people talking, they can
Sure.
be. If they want to be at the bar with people going crazy and betting, they can.
Oh,
and so
you got bets going on, huh?
But, you know, it's going to be 72 degrees.
Yeah, right.
And everybody's going to want to be outside. You know, so
you have a TV on the deck?
Well, I haven't... I haven't hooked it up yet to make sure it's going to work, but I better.
Yeah.
So I've been spending the time outside. Then my gate quit on me, so I have to, you know, it's and you know, she just got over, she isn't over it yet. She had a bunch of things go on with her health, and I said, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
Are you sure you want me to do this?
Right.
Because,
I know.
She wants to.
Oh,
you know,
course.
it's got to be, it's party time, and it's always been her.
Well, we've had many Super Bowl parties at my house, and I think every year for the last 5 or 6 years we've had people over, and this is the first year we're not having people over this year, and it will probably be different because it is fun to have other people around, you know, because sometimes the game isn't so great, you know what I mean, and it's, you know, it's funner to.
And it's not the teams you really wanted to be there.
Teams you want to be there, you know, and especially with the Patriots. And I will watch it a little bit maybe closer than in years past because I really want to see the Patriots lose. Well, and I'm not afraid to say that.
Almost everybody I've talked to says the same thing. You know, it was like the election. You know, you vote for who you don't want to be in there.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, you vote against those
Speaking
people.
of presidents, and I don't want to get too far into it, but did you catch the State of the Union?
I did.
Yeah, were you impressed, discouraged, all the above?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised, unlike Nancy Pelosi, who didn't seem to be.
No, she was mad all the time, but sure, scowl.
You know, when you get a guy that's, and there was some insight on what he had shared with one of the networks, and that was that, and I think that's very obvious. He thought it was all running the White House was just business, not politics. You didn't have to make friends. Well, it's a mistake that many politicians make when they get into office, and we were all holding our breath, hoping that there weren't any more tweets or derogatory comments, you know, during the speech. And I thought, you know, it doesn't make any difference who you voted for if you didn't feel like an American by the end of that speech. To me, it was a unity thing. It didn't seem to cross the aisle. Everybody got more angry, but for things that he's accomplished, and he didn't keep saying me, 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 he said we. And I thought it was a good speech. And our Congressman, Mike Thompson, said it was the best read speech that the president has ever given, unlike his predecessor who read the Monitor all the time. And I just thought it was, you know, I felt good afterwards, and I didn't listen to the rebuttal, and I knew that the networks would turn it into something negative, as they did. But what did you think of it?
Well, I only watched the first, 35 minutes. We had a basketball game last night.
Yeah.
I only watched the first 35 minutes. And I'm not a Trump lover.
Most
To
people
begin
aren't,
with.
yeah.
There are some of his policies that I do agree with, but as a man himself, I have a real hard time with him. And so I was happy to see last night that he did not be a braggart or a boastful or the normal Trump that you see that makes so many people cringe. And I think that even you would agree with that. You know, that
Yeah, I
there's-
do, and that's what I was afraid of. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really, that's been his operation in the past is me, 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 me.
Yeah.
And
Now, I will say to that point that the clapping for himself or the clapping was a little distracting. I don't know why he kept clapping after he would say things. You know, was he clapping for himself? Was he clapping because everybody else is clapping? And the clapping, when you're watching a speech and you're hearing the it's hard enough to watch those speeches as it is because after every sentence, the supporters stand and the detractors sit and it just it was what the third longest speech in presidential
I don't
State
know.
of the Union history.
Yeah.
Probably could have gotten condensed down into half of the length that it was,
Well.
but that's true in every one of those things.
Well, it was a 50-minute speech, but with all the applause.
With all the
and
applause
that
that
went-
drug out, yeah. So,
But
again, I just want to say that for somebody who does not like Trump as a persona, I felt that he conducted himself well and was probably the most presidential, if you want to use that word, that I've seen him, maybe even ever. Because I felt that his message of unity and he didn't bring himself into the conversation, was something that I don't think we've seen from him. Maybe, at least in a long time.
Well, I agree, and I don't think anybody, maybe his hardline people on the right would say that he could have been more conservative about what he said. But I thought that it was a message to unify, hopefully, and of course it didn't cross the aisle. You could tell that very easily.
Well, and that's going to be the problem. See, so this is what happens in Congress and why the American people are so frustrated with our government. It doesn't matter if we have a Republican president or a Democratic president, because the members of the opposite party are so stubborn and their heels are so dug into what they believe that you don't see a lot of unity going on. And I'm hoping that maybe we get a little bit more of that, and that's what I think the American people want, is they want compromise on both sides to get things done, and not, oh, well, we're Republicans and we want this, or we're Democrats and we're not going to do that because you're a Republican, that kind of a thing. It's so tired and old now.
Well, it's like we've said before, it becomes the government wherever you are. I don't care at what level you go. It becomes a government by the politicians for the politicians.
Yeah.
They'll vote themselves pay increases and close factories so they can continue to get their $175,000 salary, no matter if they've served 2 years or 100 years,
Sure,
for
yeah.
the rest of their life. I was glad that he brought up health care.
Yeah, I was too. I thought that was good.
I think that he's addressing a lot of the concerns. My concern is that that Congress and the party and both sides will allow, because there's an emphasis on prices of drugs, will push it towards mail order. Amazon yesterday said they were going to start their own health care. And for their employees, they have over 1 million employees. They are going to take the profit structure completely out of it, and they are going to put together a program where nobody makes any money. It'll be completely profitless, and that, I'm afraid, will become a model for the future. Now, nobody, and I have tried to explain on this radio program how unfair the prices are, and both to the provider, the pharmacy, and to the distributor. And so we're paying so much more for a drug in this country, as President Trump brought up last night, than they pay in Canada, that they pay in Mexico. And for those people that don't know, prices for drugs are determined by the economy of the country that is providing the health care. So if Mexico can afford to pay $84,000 for Harvoni for hepatitis C, they'll pay $3,000 or $4,000 for an $84,000 drug. Now, is $84,000 the price that we should be paying in America? Absolutely not. But we pick up what other countries can't pick up for our prices. Now, the answer is certainly not to bring Canadian and Mexican drugs. I mean, we import those because a lot of the manufacturers of medications have moved to Ireland, to Mexico, to Canada, and my wife was just reading me an ad this morning in our local Record B about Canadian pharmacies. You know, call us here, we can transfer your prescriptions, we can get them here. My problem with that situation, and we have hundreds of customers in this county that go to Mexico and fill up their inventory of medications. Nothing wrong with that as far as illegal goes, but you don't know what you're getting. We had some people go to across the border and get atorvastatin. The person got extremely ill, had the drug assayed, and there was very little atorvastatin, which is Lipitor, in that drug. There happened to be controlled substances. There happened to be other things as fillers that made those people have a bad reaction to this. So all I'm saying is, you know, people come in my pharmacy and they say, I want to do business with you, or they don't want to do business with me. I contribute to the schools around here. Last year it was $35,000 to this community out of a little independent pharmacy in Lakeport, California, just to Lake County, between the fires, the schools, the 4-H, the county fair, the Taste of Lake County, the fishing tournament that's going on March 17th for $500. I would really appreciate the people that are asking for funds from a little pharmacy like this that makes much less than a CVS or a Safeway to do business with me. I have a patient right now that could get a better price from the CVS pharmacy and doesn't care, wants to get the medication from us even though it pays more. And it happens to be an employee of the school system that could drive to Santa Rosa and get their medication for nothing. How do you compete against a company that's going to give you your generic drugs for $0, even though you're out of town? And that happens all the time. It's extremely difficult to go through and do a cost analysis on people's prescriptions on what we pay and what our competitors pay for medications. There's a reason that we're the only independent pharmacy in Lakeport. There's a reason that we continue to survive for 38 years. There's a reason that the chain pharmacies survive. And let me give you a perfect reason that a lot of you don't think about. A lot of you are in organizations that say you must go to CVS to get your drugs, whether it's the county, whether it's the city, whether it's a government agency or an institution. CVS is the only place you can go. When you have a conveyor belt that is constantly full of prescriptions because people don't have a choice, then you don't have to worry about whether you make the customer happy or not. They could care less if they lose you. They could care less if they got how many thousands of prescriptions from Kmart when they bought their files. They can't take care of everybody like they used to. But you go to them because your company or your insurer says you must go to CVS. Is it any cheaper for the insurance company to do that? Absolutely not. Is it any cheaper for, I have asked the county, the Board of Supervisors, at least let me give you a presentation. Let me have a chance. I don't know what the rules are in this county today, but when a contract went up that expired, you were supposed to open it for bidding. And I have gone to the county administrator and the Board of Supervisors on many occasions. I've never been asked to present a drug program to them. So I didn't plan on getting on a soapbox this morning, but we started out with the presidential message, and it started on prescription drug pricing and what it's going to cost you to get a new prescription. And believe me, as the president said, the price of drugs will go down. Well, will they go down to me as a provider? Will they go down to you as a patient? It may be that you won't get a bulletin from the Food and Drug Administration or from the Center for Disease Control, who, by the way, CDC just lost their administrator today, their CEO, because she was buying tobacco stocks. And here she is, the Center for CDC. So now you've got my adrenaline going. We need to talk about health care.
Sorry about that, Bill. Round them up.
The flu is
man.
still out there. And I tried to print out an article this morning that said a lady broke her ribs from this coughing. And it doesn't happen often, but in this coughing part of this flu disease, it is happening. I had already broken my ribs twice, and you put this heavy cough that everybody's experiencing in on top of tender ribs, or if you're recovering from an accident or something like that and you've had surgery, it's pretty difficult. And my experience was just putting my arms underneath my chest and holding my ribs in so I didn't injure them more, because I got the flu or a sample of this disease that's going around right after I broke my ribs the second time in 3 months. So you be very careful. If you can take something to stop the cough or to break it up, that's great. The number one drug to break that congestion up is guaifenesin, and a lot of those drugs have dextromethorphan in them, which is a cough suppressant at the same time. And what people may not know is that teens, not only teens, but young adolescents are having a problem with dextromethorphan, and it's one that's self-induced. There was a girl that was age 11, and after a trip to an animal sanctuary in New York, she began volunteering there and became a vegan. A few years later, after visiting a school for girls in India with her parents, she started making plans to volunteer in Nepal before college. Working with those girls forced her into the sex trade, and she is remembered by her friends and families and teachers and neighbors as a joyful girl. But it was not just heartbreaking, but inexplicable when a few weeks after her 15th birthday, she took her own life. Her descent into darkness was so quick and unexpected that they couldn't reach her in time. Her rabbi said in a eulogy that was later published in a tight-knit town newspaper, they were looking for answers. They learned from her friends that her daughter had just 2 weeks ago, before the suicide, started experimenting with over-the-counter drugs that contained dextromethorphan. And when you buy Robitussin or guaifenesin or Mucomyst, and it says DXM in it, or DM, that's dextromethorphan. Well, when they started looking, they uncovered a stash of over-the-counter cough and cold products in her bedroom and discovered that she'd been shoplifting the drugs from a local supermarket, taking higher than recommended dosages to get high. Well, it's generally safe, but in high doses it can cause a range of dangerous side effects, including abnormal heartbeat and sedation. It can also create a sense of euphoria, feeling good, and hallucinations. And while the girl's parents acknowledged that other factors might have contributed to their daughter's suicide, they thought that she may have made that fatal choice, may not have, if she had not been under the influence of dextromethorphan. We have had problems keeping dextromethorphan on the shelf before this year. We would find a complete shelf, and it's right in front of the pharmacy, missing products that had dextromethorphan in it. We had a teen last year that brought a bottle, came in coughing severely, brought a bottle of guaifenesin, and walked outside and drank the whole bottle. A parent picked that child up before we could go out there. I don't know what happened to the child. Hopefully they figured it out rather quickly because they were on the scene almost immediately. And this isn't a new thing. This started back in the 60s when I just started college. It recognizes the potential for abuse and requires that it's labeled appropriately. But it's found in more than 100 over-the-counter products, including those from major brands such as Mucinex, Robitussin, Theraflu, Triaminic, Vicks. It also comes in a variety of forms, which is liquid or gel caps, lozenges, and tablets. Slightly more than 3% of the American teens abuse these cough medicines. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, about 1 in 3 teens know someone who has abused those drugs. At doses 3 to 4 times what we would take, recommended on the labels, the effect can be similar to alcohol. And even higher doses can create highs similar to PCP, which is phencyclidine, which is back in the 70s really was popular in metropolitan areas. When I was managing for Walgreens in San Jose and San Francisco, there were a lot of people taking PCP, which is an animal tranquilizer, and they get these hallucinations and they have these out-of-body experiences and loss of concentration, and some of the times they get an abnormal strength. Back then, when we'd have somebody arrested on PCP, it would take 3 or 4 police officers to sustain their activity because they were so out of it. Many of the drugs that contain DXM are antihistamines and decongestants and pain relievers. And you look at a bottle of Vicks today, and it may not be what Vicks was, which was mostly menthol, at all. You look at a bottle of a decongestant, and it may be phenylephrine instead of epinephrine or pseudoephedrine, but it also contains dextromethorphan. So there's high doses of those individual ingredients that can pose their own risks. For example, a Tylenol, acetaminophen, doses slightly above the allowed daily maximum for pain reliever can seriously harm the liver. If you were listening to us around Thanksgiving, you heard me talk about a person who didn't normally drink wine and took a Tylenol before he sat down at Thanksgiving dinner and then had a glass of wine. He woke up 3 days later in a hospital with a liver transplant because his liver completely was destroyed. And that wasn't an excessive amount. But when you start taking combination products, you need to multiply the risk of side effects from each one of these to see how much at risk you're having. But most of us, including parents, are often unaware of the risks. We would assume that that kind of medication, if you just go to the store and purchase it without a prescription, it must be safe. But these kids, not just kids, and these don't necessarily have to be people on the wrong side of the tracks. They're attracted to drugs precisely because they're easier to get a hold of. And they say alcohol or illegal drugs are more difficult, so they can buy these off the shelf. They're generic, they're inexpensive. Many parents are aware that they're sometimes misused by teens, but using them to get high is not information that's readily available without you looking at it. Social media plugs, websites are home to a world of DXM information. There are words like robotripping, meaning Robitussin, tripping, skittling, or sheeting, which means to take a whole blister pack of medications. The internet is powerful. The internet sites that we go on, like Facebook and the tweets and those kind of things, are completely out of line for those people. They go underground on websites and find these. We really take the problem very seriously, and I said when I worked in the city it was much worse. In 2008, the manufacturers of cough and cold medicine voluntarily placed this warning on the packaging. Parents learn more about teen medicine, and they gave a website. I'll bet you there aren't 5 parents that listen to this show, or grandparents, that know that's on the outside of a bottle of Robitussin DM. In 2010, which was 7 years ago, they enacted a 3-pronged plan to mitigate abuse through parent education. For example, the CPHA tracks internet to search terms related to dextromethorphan abuse. Since 2012, 14 states have enacted laws to limit the sale of cold and flu medicines containing DXM. I don't know really how else to tell you that it just isn't safe anymore. No matter what it is, when you come in, you can always abuse a drug by taking more of it than's required. And there's information online on these websites that tell them exactly how to do it. Kids can still get their hands on drugs. For example, New York does restrict the sale of drugs to minors. This gal actually shoplifted the medications, and after her death, one local drugstore moved DXM products behind the counter. So if anyone wants one of those drugs, they have to talk to a pharmacist or a cashier first. That's a difficult thing to do, because a lot of people that buy that product, most people that buy that product, do not have an abuse problem. They're buying it for, and we recommend it when a parent comes in and talks to us about what they can take for a cough. We'll talk to them about the abuse. If they appear to be somebody that's has teens, or could be possibly taking it, or grandkids that would be around, even if they go behind the counter, kids will always be able to get the drug one way or another. Often by simply going to the medicine cabinet, and we have it. Almost everybody has it in their medicine cabinet. What could a parent do? And I know this seems like snooping, and it really is, and it's monitoring all the meds in the home. Know what's in your medicine cabinet. Don't leave meds lying around where your teens and their friends could be tempted. Look for signs. If you have grandkids or kids, they're often surprisingly bad at covering up their tracks. They'll do something to cover up alcohol, but they don't do a very good job. But when it comes to empty medicine bottles or packaging under the bed, don't hesitate to get help from a counselor. Watch for behavior changes, and as a teen, you're going to see those behavior changes anyway. So those kinds of signs should never be attributed to just normal adolescent development. If you or someone you know has a bad reaction, you can report it. So here we are in a supposedly non-toxic medication that is going to be used for a long amount of time, and has been for years. And like I say, this isn't just new. I've been up here 38 years, and I had that abuse, like I said, when I managed for Walgreens all over the Bay Area. So it's more noticeable up here because we're a smaller community. And if we see an influx of large amounts that we're having to reorder, we know somebody's stealing it. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about steps for safe, comfortable eating on Super Bowl day. As we begin another year, we're going to have to make many choices in our lives. With the economy still struggling, we all have decisions to make relating to our health. My name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies. Healthcare is one of the many items that will be changing again this year. At Northlake Medical Pharmacies, we're striving to give you more for your dollar. We're still selling and renting durable medical equipment, including lift chairs, walkers, wheelchairs, and transport chairs. To help you with your healthcare decisions, we have qualified healthcare professionals that will be able to answer your questions. We would like to help you whether you need a prescription for a medication, a wheelchair or walker, an immunization to prevent a disease, or simply regular drugs, gifts, and sundries. Northlake Medical Pharmacies is the place to shop. Northlake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you, at Hill Road next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital and in front of the Bruno Shops Mart on Lakeport Boulevard.
On Friday, February 2nd, the Krenoff School hosts the reception for its annual Midwinter Fine Furniture Show at the Fort Bragg Town Hall from 5 to 8 p.m., featuring a breadth of work from this year's fine woodworking students. The exhibit will also be open daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. from January 28th through February 4th. For more information, contact the Krenoff School at woodshop@mcn.org or call 964-7056.
Captain Eric Lawrence was training Afghan soldiers when his truck was hit by an IED.
I was on the way from Kandahar to Kalat, hit an IED that just took the truck and threw it up in the air and slammed it on the ground. I knew at first that I got hurt pretty bad because I couldn't move my legs. I sat home alone for months. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to go back to work. I was hesitant at first, because I didn't work for a good year. I want to be a productive person. I don't want to be a drain on society. I want to be a positive thing in society. PVA helped me write my resume, got me a job interview. I got the job.
Helping veterans like Eric is what we've done for over 65 years. Paralyzed Veterans of America, paving access for veterans' employment through Operation PAVE. For more information, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their Member of the Month, Tompkins Tax Consultants. John and Diane Tompkins have been serving Lake County since 1974 and have been a member of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce for 24 years. They provide services to many small businesses and individuals in Lake and Mendocino County. Their main office is located in Lucerne off Highway 20, and they also have a second satellite location in Lakeport at 576 Lakeport Boulevard. For more information, reach them at 274-1843.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
Go to the Olympics.
All right, we are back here on Health Talk.
Well, Paul and I were talking about Super Bowl and how much of a pig we are. We're probably worse in Super Bowl than we are with Thanksgiving because it's all the wrong stuff.
It's all the the snack food type stuff. But you know what's interesting? I read somewhere. You know what the most popular main dish at a Super Bowl party is?
I would say nachos or.
Now nachos would be considered like an appetizer, but like a main dish.
Well,
it's chili, isn't that?
Is it really?
Yeah, chili. Yeah. A lot of people make chili for their Super Bowl parties.
Well, I've got some in the freezer from last time. Maybe I'll try that. I've done beer, Polish sausages and beer, and we've done a turkey, a prime rib.
Wow, you did turkey for Super Bowl, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's relatively inexpensive during the holidays, so you just buy 2 or 3. And one time I had a 20, more than that, almost a 50-pound. It was raised right here, right across from the pharmacy at Hill Road, and killed it. Mm-hmm. And we had to cut it up into pieces because it was too big to put in a barbecue.
Oh, wow.
And did half on one barbecue and half on the other. It really came out well.
Yeah.
tasted very good. So, but when we're there, and we have Dana's sorority, that's their meeting for February, and so each one of the girls bring an appetizer, and then we do the main course. And so there's, I mean, you know, it starts about 1:30, and then you pig out until game time, and then by the time you bring out the main course at halftime, everybody's jammed
full,
up
yeah.
to eating. Half of them are in the back puking.
Oh, good Lord.
No. But what I meant when I said we're going to talk about, you know, how to eat at Super Bowl, there are more people that eat very quickly and eat a lot of different foods at one time. And as difficult as it is, and you'd be amazed how many people that are in my age group that choke on food, and that not so much that they quit breathing completely, but they start coughing. And it's mainly because they're eating too fast, or they see this new appetizer come out, and before anybody else gets it, they want to cram it in really fast. So you get upper throat issues at that point with coughing or choking, or having liquids come back through your nose because you're trying to, I don't know if you've ever had this happen at a restaurant, but I had.
When you start laughing? Or?
Well, I was choking on something, and so you take a glass of water and then you cough just when you put the water in, and the water comes back out your nose. Not a pretty sight in a nice restaurant. Feeling like the food or liquid is entering your windpipe, which does happen, and this one, it may not be this cause, but regurgitation or drooling because you have too much food in your mouth. And it's usually at the time that somebody comes up to you and says, I don't think I've met you before. What's your name? So, and we've already got people that are having respiratory problems because of the flu and of pneumonia. And if you haven't gotten your pneumonia shot yet, remember, there's 2 to get, and one you'd probably gotten years ago, and then the other one came out 2 years ago. So be sure and make sure that you've had both of those. One is Pneumovax 23, and the other one is a Prevnar 13. You have to wait a year between the time you got your first pneumonia shot until you get your second one, even though they're 2 different ones. But it would just complicate anything that went on with you now. And there are people that are going to be coming to your house, or you're going to somebody else's house during Super Bowl that probably shouldn't be there. And so they're going to be to the point where you can pick up a bug from them. So if people are being treated with medication or haven't been treated for medication, either way they can still transmit the disease. So and then you're going to have people that are being treated for cancer and other kinds of terminal diseases, which came up last night. Again, the president said he wanted people to be able to get experimental drugs for cancer treatment without having to go through a whole array of expense and refusal to get the kind of medicine they want. So you can have esophageal problems from this, where the upper part of your esophagus, you begin swallowing, and the food and liquid has extended and entered the esophagus, and the main symptom is sometimes painful sensation of food or liquid being stuck in your throat or chest before it makes. And of course, people are going to want to regurgitate that up, and sometimes that can't happen. Sometimes it's just a narrowing of the structure, and it can be caused by a lot of factors. A lot of people way more take the medication for esophageal reflux than really need to, but that can cause damage which food and acid will back up from people that chew tobacco, that have an ulcerated situation in their mouth. That also can be irritating and cause problems with the esophagus. And so when the narrowing of that esophagus becomes substantial, and you may not notice it until you start eating quickly or not chewing your food completely, and then you do have a problem. So, and it seems like it's some of the same foods. Meat is a big factor in many situations. Disintegrating the food by chewing it many times is probably not something that you're thinking about doing when you're watching a world-famous football game. But we need to think of those things as we get into those situations. I've had every party, I've had somebody that not had to do the Heimlich on, but that had trouble swallowing or had trouble eating, and you just watch them and make sure that they're okay. When we go on our fishing trip and a bunch of guys fishing and eating and going someplace to eat are prime examples of people not taking time enough to chew their food. They want to get on the road and get home, and so we go to breakfast. And just 2 years ago, we had one of our fishing club members. We were at Wairika having breakfast, and we were trying to get on the road, and he was eating too quickly, and he gave us the signal that he was choking to death. And of course, the guy was 6'5", and I couldn't even
get around.
I couldn't even get to his waist, So one of the taller guys got up and dislodged the food, and he was okay. But nobody was really paying attention. Everybody was waiting for the food and wanting to get on the road. And then all of a sudden, I look over, and he's one booth down across from me, and I yell. And the guy next to him got up and dislodged that food. But we want you to have a good time at the Super Bowl. We want you to be able to relax and win some money, maybe, if you have a bet going, or you're doing a square where you buy a square. We want you to eat and drink and have a good time, but be careful how much you do of both of those things, because you're going to be very uncomfortable when you go home.
Is there a favorite food that you like at the Super Bowl that you have to have?
I don't think so. I like casseroles, which are not good for me to like, because and I like the cheese dips and those kind of things. I like the little hot dogs in a blanket or whatever they are. I don't like messy things. I don't. My wife always wants me to take something to the pharmacy for lunch every day that I have to put in the microwave or I have to cook.
Yeah.
And I just don't like, and I usually work through lunch in my office, and I just don't like things that get messy if I'm at home. Mm-hmm. And we're going to clean right up afterwards, but we have a bunch of people that stagger themselves to go to lunch. So, so I get used to. I'd like to have a salad every day, but it gets too messy if I'm working in the office. So, but most of that, and then they bring desserts. I'm not a dessert fan, mm-hmm. but there's always something there that looks good, and I'll try it. It's not that I don't like desserts. It's just I don't have a craving for sweets.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
And the people that do have a way bigger problem trying to control their weight.
You put out a plate of brownies and cookies and a plate of pickles. I'm all over the pickles.
Oh, me too.
I sit there and munch on pickles all day long.
I went shopping for my wife on Sunday because she cracked a rib, and so I was trying to get all the heavy stuff so she didn't have to. And the thing that was the most difficult for me to pass up was the Vlasic dill pickle
mm-hmm.
halves.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get the whole jar and eat it, and I left
drink
it.
the juice.
Yeah.
And then I take the leftover juice and I put carrots in it and celery and I eat that later, after a couple days. And I don't know why, pickles are my thing.
Yeah, I take vegetables that are starting to get soft and not crispy anymore, and throw them in pickle juice.
Yeah.
Let them sit there a couple of days, and
great.
they're super. I like veggies. I mean, I really
mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah, I do too.
My wife really isn't a veggie fan, but that's the other thing I'll go to. I'll go to the veggie tray, and I'll get peas, and I'll get radishes and onions. I love,
I like radishes too. And onions, yeah. There it goes.
What is it? Every
somebody just knows that you're at your show, and
they're usually out of the country.
Yeah.
Wherever they are, they're gone.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll see them next time.
Yeah, we'll see them next time. But yeah, anyway, those kind of things are my favorite. I like salads. I like macaroni salad. I like, funny, I like the lettuce that's just the cheapest.
The iceberg.
The iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, it's the crunchiest.
And that's, I like things that are crunchy like that. Yeah. So now you know what I like. So
go out and get it.
You invite me.
All you sorority sisters out there listening, you want to know what to bring to the party.
Bring radishes, onions, casseroles, cheese dips, those kind of things that I really shouldn't. And I don't really have those things at home. My wife loves to have sandwiches with chips, and I'm not a chip person, and I'm not a dip person, but I will eat them.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that I don't like them. I just have, I guess, I think about what they're doing to me when I don't eat cheesecake. I don't eat sour cream. I don't, because I know, I love ice cream, but I don't eat it because I know I'd want a second bowl,
Yeah.
So I'm not a very good disciplinarian. I'm good to say no on most things the first time, but if I weaken and I go and have that, the chances are I won't just have one bite. So I try to discipline myself, but I'm going to have a good time. I've got, I'll move the bar outside. So we don't make a mess. We make some fizzes that have ice cream in them, and have people spill them and get them all over. And the main televisions will be inside. I want to remind everybody that we are starting what we talked about last week of synchronizing your medications. We're starting with our deliveries and then going to get the rest of our patients in gradually, where all of your medications will be filled in approximately the same day. When I do medical therapy management and find out that the insurance company has put an alert out on a patient because they failed to get their atorvastatin filled, or they failed to get their atenolol filled, or they failed to get their insulin, which doesn't happen very often with insulin because people know they need it, then I get an alert from the insurance company, and it's usually CVS Caremark, saying this patient is non-adherent, meaning they're not getting their prescription filled on time, and so they've been without it, and we're not going to continue to pay for the medication if you don't get the patient back on it. Many times we will find that the patient has refills on that medication. They didn't get it filled because the doctor said no. They didn't get it filled because they forgot about it. And typically it's the same patients, and it's the same medications. And typically many medications you don't even know that you've taken, and so you don't feel any different. If you take a blood pressure medication, you probably don't feel any different. If you don't take it, you may start feeling different and wonder what's wrong. If you take a statin for high cholesterol, most of the time you don't feel any different while taking it. But to add something to that, I had a patient in yesterday that got a statin refilled, and or filled a new prescription, and I had to do a consult with them. And I asked them if they had been taking a statin prior, and I was told that they had been taking a statin prior, and it was a different statin. And I said, well, why did they change it? And the patient said, well, I had extreme muscle soreness by taking the statin, and they said if I changed it to this statin, that might not happen. So what I told the patient was that, listen, this can happen with any statin. The first thing we do is try, especially if you have an ongoing situation that we change it to a different statin, and many times that will take care of it. But I'm going to tell you that many times that doesn't take care of it. So if the muscle soreness, which can be severe, starts happening again, then get in touch with your physician. We may have to change it to something else. Now, the statins have been so popular because they've been so effective that almost everything else for cholesterol has been taken off the market because nobody's buying it. There is a product called cholestyramine, which is a powder that you put in, and it doesn't taste that wonderful, and you put a scoopful of this and add water to it or juice, and it links to the medication, the cholesterol does, and pulls it out of your system. That is almost impossible to get anymore because nobody wants to take it. But there are situations where we have to get it to some people to get their cholesterol down. The other things are injectable things that you can take, and they're very effective but very expensive. So, but those are the kind of things that we get a notice on. Why isn't this patient taking it? We'll call them up, and they'll say, well, yesterday we called a person up, and they were in the doctor's office at that time getting a new prescription for the medication because it didn't have a refill on it. Those things slip by us because we're so busy filling prescriptions, and there's no conflict when we run the prescription. It's not saying it's too soon. It's not saying it's late. It'll always tell you if it's too early because the insurance won't pay for it, but it doesn't tell us when somebody's late taking it. So that's something that we try to get on the telephone with you and or your caregiver and talk about and make sure that you understand that it's important that you maintain. These medications are called maintenance medications. High blood pressure medications, diabetic medications, respiratory medications for asthma and COPD. There is a trend now in those medications, especially the expensive inhalers that are $300 or $400 a piece, to, if you're taking it for asthma, once your asthma is controlled, they back you off of some of those medicines because they're steroids. The steroid use does not. I gave an individual a Tdap shot yesterday, and he had marked that he was taking either chemotherapy or a steroid, and so I went ahead and gave him the Tdap shot because I assumed it was an inhaler. I should have not done that, but they suggest that those people, the physicians suggest that those people get, especially oncologists, get the Tdap shot anyway, which is tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. He had was on a steroid inhaler, which doesn't necessarily cause any systemic reaction, meaning internal. It acts as an anti-inflammatory to reduce the swelling in the lungs so you can fill them full of air. Then if it gets controlled, your asthma is controlled, and say you're on a steroid tablet, you're on a steroid inhaler, you're on a bronchodilator, they start backing you off the medications, and instead of backing you off the medications in the order that they put you on the medications, they will do it in reverse. So the last medication that was added to your regimen will be the first medication to go, and they'll monitor you as they continue to get a better hand on the asthma. Number one, they'll find what the trigger is, what really initiated the asthma, and avoid that, and try to keep you steroid-free from oral use of the steroids that they can. So when you don't take your medicines and the insurance company contacts us, it's just a matter of time, if it keeps going, that you get in trouble with the insurance company. I never have that happen with me individually, so I'm not sure what the insurance company will tell you, but what they tell us, and they pay us to, not much, but they pay us to contact your physician and find out why you're not on the medication. Now, we just had physicians that were on sabbaticals, and there was nobody there to okay the patient not taking the medication. That doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen. So if you're feeling a little bit different and you take, some people take, 10, 12, 15 medications that have different disease states, and they need multiple meds in order to function. If some of those have disappeared and you think you can stop taking them, and all of a sudden your blood pressure goes up, which happens frequently, and just happened to a patient of mine last week, and it was that medication, the patient didn't feel any different because he wasn't taking it. It was one less thing to have to pay for, and he thought he was doing the right thing. But what you don't understand many times is that that medication is what makes you feel good, and that's why you're not feeling bad. Before I forget, and I should have done this at the beginning of the show, the radio station is having trouble with the 263-5252. If you call that number, you get it's actually transmitting the radio frequency somehow, and it's all garbled up. If you call 263-5254, that's 263-5254, you can get through to the radio station. So I'll put a thing on to remind us at the beginning of the show instead of the end of the show. We had a problem last week, and we talked about it, and then
we haven't been able to get anybody out here. So hopefully by next week it'll be solved.
Yeah.
But just in the meantime, we'll
but
continue.
if you hear the Trading Post, that was a recording from several years ago.
Boy, there's a blast from the past right there.
We used to be here, and they would call and want to sell a tractor, and I say, how much do you want for it? But but it has been a little confusing for people that are trying to call.
Yeah,
so it'll be done next week, and again, it's 263-5254. Remember that this nice weather we're having, we hope, is limited, and
1 minute left, Bill.
We're going to get back into the old weather where we get some more rain, and once again become more people inside and more people.
Is there rain in the forecast?
No,
No,
not
I
for
don't
almost
think so.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
That's not good. We really need the rain. We would like to remind you that we're still giving flu shots. We have about 4 or 5 left. We haven't decided, since the county had a flu clinic, whether we will order any more or not. We'd also like to remind you that we're still giving different shots, Tdap, pneumonia, flu, whatever you need, we can do it except yellow fever. We'd like to remind you also that we are North Lake Medical Pharmacy with a couple of locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East, across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192, and outside the Bruno Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard, 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill, and we'll see everybody back next Wednesday with the new NFL champion Philadelphia Eagles.
Whoa!
Hey, I said it, and we'll see what happens this weekend. Enjoy the big game, as it has to be called officially.
That's right.
And we'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday for Health Talk on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX.